Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulfur Blade, and I'm back here with another video. So, a lot of stuff's been happening. I'm gonna touch on some of it briefly. Well, I'm gonna touch on a whole slew of issues briefly. I wanted to start off with the removal of Marjorie Taylor Greene from her congressional committees. Some of you may or may not have heard of this freshman congressman who's a Republican from the state of Georgia. She has been linked to quote-unquote QAnon and amongst other quote-unquote conspiracy theories. Now, she has, in the past, pointed out some interesting takes on some things, such as, I saw one thing that Tim Pool posted where she commented about possible experimental energy being performed in California where they were attempting to redirect sunlight off of satellites down to solar panels in California on the Earth. Now, there may be some truth to that. It sounds like something scientists and energy companies would experiment with. Can we figure out a way to enhance solar power by using the ability to reflect sunlight off of a satellite down to a particular spot on Earth? However, this comment was made around the same time as the wildfires, and that this could have sparked the wildfires. And, well, at point blank, at a simple look at it, like most conspiracy theories, if you look at them from an objective viewpoint, well, there's some, what's the word I'm looking for? Some merit to the conversation. So, whether or not the energy company actually did erroneously redirect the Earth's sunlight to a different location, sparking a forest fire, which likely probably didn't happen, and she actually, if you read her comments, she implied that there's a possibility that maybe that happened, not that it did happen. So oftentimes people will look at conspiracy theories as what if, what if it's possible that the odd mathematical anomalies of, say, like the pyramids, like the Great Pyramid, for instance, is perfectly north, south, east, and west within so many fractions of a degrees. It's exactly on the middle equatorial line. It's the middle location if you were to take an average of all of the Earth's landmass. I mean, there's a whole bunch of coincidences that people have mathematically created out of the pyramids. But they're interesting, right? And being interested in the coincidences doesn't necessarily make you some crazy believer in conspiracy theories. So being interested in the possibility that maybe an energy company might have erroneously reflected the sun's energy down to Earth and missed where it was going is a logical step if they are indeed experimenting with that type of power creation. It's a logical discussion, right? Hey, what if energy companies are doing this? Which I don't know if they are or they aren't. That's neither here nor there. But if they were, what if they did miss their mark and they did cause a forest fire, for instance? That's a logical discussion to have. Basically, here's what it boils down to. She made these comments in the public space, in the public forum. Americans had the ability to read her comments and decipher how crazy or kooky they thought that she was. And then in the end, the voters of Georgia elected her. With full knowledge of the quote-unquote conspiracy theories, they elected her. Then when she makes it to Congress, upon arrival, our new leftist fascist state decided to strip her of any congressional committees she might have been put into because of her quote-unquote involvement with conspiracy theories in the past, which the voter was aware of because it happened before she was elected, thus subverting the people's will who elected her in the first place. Congress basically told the voters in Georgia who elected her that we don't give a shit about your pesky opinions of putting this representative in government. You chose poorly, little minions. Go away. We elitist, leftist, fascist dictators know better. So we're going to strip your representative of her authority. Now be gone. I think that's interesting, right? Let's think about Democrats. Let's think of the Democrats' involvement in the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. I found it interesting. I was reading an article in 2018 by the Washington Post where the article said that over the years there have been 11 governors and 16 senators from the KKK in government. But the most interesting way that they framed that was that they said that there was a roughly equal split of Republicans and Democrats. Roughly equal is what the Washington Post said in their article. And then when you look at it, how many of this roughly equal split was there at, say, the governor level? Well, 9 of the governors were Democrats, and 2 of the governors were Republicans. 9-2. That doesn't sound roughly equal in my mind, but I guess Democrats might feel that's roughly equal. Then senators, again, roughly equal split. Of the 16 senators who were part of the KKK, 14 were Democrat, and 2 were Republican. Roughly equal, though. I mean, 14-2 is obviously like 50-50. It's not even, arguable. Seriously? This is what the crazy people on the left do. Now let's just point out a few of these illustrious Democrat senators. Like, for example, John Brown Gordon, the founder of the Ku Klux Klan in the state of Georgia. Senator for Georgia. Or Senator John Tyler Morgan of Alabama, who was the Grand Dragon of the KKK. Or Edmund Pettus, also of Alabama, also a Grand Dragon. Or Joseph E. Brown of Georgia, a senator and a Democrat. Or Theodore Bilbo of Mississippi, a senator and a Democrat. Or Hugo Black of Alabama, a senator and a Democrat. Or who can forget Robert C. Byrd, the minority leader in the Senate of the Democrats. Robert C. Byrd, the mentor of the one and only most popular president of all time, Joe Biden, from West Virginia. And he wasn't just a low-level KKK. No, he was the Grand Pumbaa of his chapter. Numero uno at the top of his group. He had some strange title. I forget what it was. But yeah, Robert C. Byrd, the mentor, the person that taught Joe Biden all that he knows. Bigwig from the Ku Klux Klan and a Democrat. You know what's interesting about that? The very fact that that happened is part of what makes America great. What makes America great is that when it comes down to it, when it comes down to push and shove, or this is the way the system's supposed to work, Americans elect people based off of based off of an election. Of course, we have, for the presidency, we have the Electoral College. But in these situations, these senators who were elected in the South, from Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia and, well, West Virginia is almost south. It's right there, close to the Mason-Dixon line. They were elected because of the principles of what makes America great, and that is we have a wide variety of different political ideas, ideologies, thought processes. And at the end of the day, it's the people's will that matters, and the people of those states elected these people. And they went to government, and they did their jobs. And we were not in the midst of a giant cultural / civil war like we are now. One would say the glorious history of KKKs in the of Ku Klux Klan members in the Democratic Party, who all sat on their committees without objection, who rose to the ranks of minority leader without objection. But now, in the year 2020, where there can only be one dominant political party, we will do everything and anything, any underhanded fucking political move possible to silence our opposition. Because they're not just our political opposition, they are our enemies. That's what the Democrats believe. The Democrats are currently in the process of systematically interviewing the entirety of the United States military to try to weed out Trumpism from the U.S. military. That's going to be an interesting process. I wonder how many armed force members are going to be left. The armed forces has been predominantly Republican through the years. Why? Because Republicans are better for them. They give them more money. They're more likely to give them a pay raise. They're more likely to support the troops, basically. So the troops aren't stupid. They know who to elect. And it isn't Democrats. But right now, the Democrats are on a holy inquisition to try to weed out the bad blood in the military. I guess we're not going to have many people left. Let's look at some of these pictures as they're going by. The peaceful protests in Kenosha. Oh yes, Stormy Daniels and the lawyer who should have been president, according to most media stars, and then he was in jail. Oh yes, media framing Trump for telling you to have a big glass of Clorox bleach. Or the record low unemployment rate for Donald Trump that nobody in the media wanted to report. Or Trump being fact-checked that the vaccines couldn't possibly come by the end of the year. All right, AOC accusing Ted Cruz of attempting to murder her. Or, that's an interesting one. It's all in our head. Conservatives aren't being censored. The president wasn't deplatformed. Senators like Ron Johnson didn't have their videos taken down. Alex Jones wasn't thrown off of all social media platforms. Steven Crowder's election coverage wasn't silenced on Facebook. Hunter Biden's scandal wasn't completely removed from all eyes prior to the election by anyone and everyone that could possibly do so. From newspapers to mainstream TV, they all went hush hush, mum's the word about Hunter. Silencing Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, the 4 different Middle East peace accords that Trump was instrumental in that nobody in the media ever talked about. The childlike, bratish behavior of Nancy Pelosi, crazy Nancy, ripping up the State of the Union. Yeah, Biden's not my president, amen. Oh, right, Parler being blamed for the quote-unquote insurrection because Facebook and YouTube and all the other social media platforms had nothing to do with it. It's sad. This is the world we live in, and it's only getting worse. In fact, you can quite confidently call the United States of America the leftist fascist states of America at this current point in time. I have never in my lifetime, and I would confidently say beyond my lifetime from what I know from history, a time period where one party, even though they narrowly control the House and they narrowly control the Senate by the tiebreaker of the vice president, I've never seen one party so intrusively in control of the country like the Democrats are. How? It doesn't make sense to me how a 50-50 split in the Senate, a nearly 50-50 split in the House, can equate to such an imbalance in real life. Well, it's because politicians really aren't as powerful as we think they are. It's actually the bureaucrats, the FBI, the CIA, mainstream media. All of these organizations are in league with the Democrat Super Party. And sadly, they're the ones in the real control of the country. Big tech, your propaganda voices at mainstream media, the FBI and CIA, who know everything that you're doing. To include Microsoft and their Wonderful push for Windows 10. Yeah, I'm going to bring up Windows 10 today. Because that's my conspiracy theory. You know how people have ragged on Marjorie Taylor Greene for having her thoughts on conspiracy theories? Well, everyone has some sort of conspiracy theory thought, and mine is on Windows 10. Why does Windows 10 need to be the primary and only operating system on PC computers? Why did they so desperately try to get their client base to switch from Windows 7 to Windows 10? Why does that operating system do what it wants to do instead of what you want it to do? You could change the default settings to tell it not to update, and it'll override your default settings when you're not looking, and it'll update on its own anyway. Why? Because Windows 10 is part of how they're spying on you, how they're gathering your information. Google is another problem. Every time you use that search engine, you're giving Google more and more data about you. And in combination with Windows 10, Big Tech, they know all. You think I jest? I don't jest on this. Windows 7 is still a Microsoft product, but it's not as filled with as many security holes as Windows 10 is. It's why I still have Windows 7. Why people are constantly badgering me on my videos saying, what is that operating system you're using? It looks like it's Windows XP. No, it's Windows 7 in classic mode. They're like, why don't you upgrade? Well, gee, it's the same reason that I would suggest everyone to use DuckDuckGo instead of Google. It's because we need to stop giving big tech the keys to our information, to our lives. Especially in a time where the left is becoming an increasingly authoritarian fascist state that's willing to throw people in jail for making memes about the presidential election in 2016. Yeah, that's actually happened. We know, unless you're blind, we know the crazy shit that's going on in this country. You have to be as blind as a fucking bat to not see it. Or you're just brainwashed on the left, and you would rather stick your fingers in your ears, close your eyes, and holler, no, 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 I don't see anything. Which is about 50% of this fucking country. They're perfectly happy to let the stupidity and the idiocracy go by as long as they get their $2,000 check. I mean, what the fuck? At what point do these people have too much of an influence in your life? You can't go to a grocery store anymore without having to pay a bag tax. Used to be a bag was something that, was provided by the grocery store. Oh, but they're plastic. Oh, but the new reusable plastic bags are 10 times thicker and 10 times worse for the environment. And we pay 10 to 15 cents for them. And then we use them the same way we use the old plastic bags, as trash can liners. Or we just throw them straight into the trash as a point to you stupid authoritative leftists that the more you try to control anything, the worse you're going to make the situation. Someday you'll figure that out. No, that's not true. You're never going to figure that out. For some reason, you're just incapable of normal human rational thought. The only thing you have is hive mind stupidity. I don't understand it. How can so many humans operate off of a hive mind type mentality? We're not insects. We don't have some microscopic chemical hormones that pass off information between the various different parts of our ant collectives that tell us what to do. No. We have the cell phone that everybody is stupidly looking at all day long. They walk down the sidewalk staring into their palm at this little square box that's rotting their brain from the inside out. Unplug from the network, you absolute incredible morons. Kind of funny coming from a person who spent most of his life in the tech sector. I have a degree in software engineering. I was a network administrator. And even when I was in the service, I was, that was before you had the IT rating in the service. I actually set up 2 different networks on board my first 2 ships. And was the quote-unquote network administrator aboard them. Which wasn't my purpose in the military. That's not what I went to school for. It's just one of the many hats I wore back in a time before the IT rating. And then, on my second ship, beautiful network I set up, I got to watch it be pushed aside for a less capable network, but it was uniform with all the other ships. Yeah, that's when the Navy finally started to put in its own networking structure, where they went to twisted pair and I had fiber optic. It was kind of funny, actually. But hey, our ship had a really good gaming LAN, and the work LAN was pretty shit. But it was uniform. I digress. Maybe it's just humanity's tendency to I don't know. I don't even believe that's the case, honestly. When I think back to the 80s and 70s, people endeavored to be better at all walks of life, from politicians to normal human beings. I don't know when the world started to be fine with becoming more stupid as you aged. I don't know when we started to have our brains rotted from just being too plugged in. I mean, I'm just as much as at fault in a way. I'm plugged into the system, but I'm plugged in from the common sense perspective, where all these people are plugged in from the how do I put it? The people who are trying to control us, the elite class, they've utilized technology. They've utilized propaganda mechanics like mainstream media. They've utilized Hollywood. They've utilized singers and songwriters. Even education. Universities. Giant frickin' propaganda machine to convince you to not be individuals, but to be part of this collective groupthink thought process. It's very scary how this has been done. And now we sit here in the precipice of individuality versus group identity. And the two ideologies, the two ways of life can't be more stark in contrast from each other. And I don't think they can coexist. It used to be being an individual was something to be celebrated. Now, being an individual is something scary. It's something to be weeded out at all costs. You can't think for yourself. You're a danger to the establishment, to the authority, to the leftist, fascist elitists that now control our country. It's only going to get worse, folks. If you don't start speaking up, you don't start waking up, it's only going to get worse. I mean, that should be apparent from 2020 down to 2018 to 2016. This all started around, well, it's been going on for a while, but in 2016, somebody put a freaking block on the accelerator of this train wreck, and we're coming up to critical speed. Do you want to be an individual? Or do you want to be part of the group collective? That's ultimately the choice you need to make at this point in time. And yeah, that simple choice even breaks down along party lines. More conservatives, more Republicans, quote unquote, evidently have individual thought, and more Democrats are part of the collective hive mind approach to living life. Well, that's not living life. If you want to be an ant, then go to some other fucking planet. This is Earth. But I digress. Okay, I've mumbled, I've ranted, I've gone in 17 different paths in this commentary, and I'm sounding like a raving lunatic at this point in time, but ultimately a lot of you may know exactly what I'm talking about, and then ultimately the other 50% of you think I'm the enemy. I'm the exact person that needs to be silenced. I'm the exact person that needs to be put into some kind of psychiatric home to be deprogrammed from my evil thought processes. Yeah, fuck you. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all, peace.